We are tracking what's trending in Bitcoin, the cryptocurrency hitting record highs today on the back of another Trump presidency. Our next guest thinks Bitcoin could hit 100,000 when Trump takes office. Joining us now is Joe McCann, founder, CEO, and CIO of Asymmetric. Joe, it's good to see you. Let's start, Joe, first and foremost, with just the move we're seeing in Bitcoin, Joe. What is driving that? What would you chalk that up to? Is that simply, Joe, it's crypto allies, including Donald Trump winning these elections?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's a number of actual structural market forces at play right now behind the price of Bitcoin. I think first, it's very clear that the Trump administration and their election team outlined a set of very specific policies that they planned on enacting within the first 100 days of him taking office. What was mispriced was a red sweep and certainly taking the popular vote. So a number of folks have been more or less waiting for the election to come behind them to then allocate to Bitcoin or crypto more generally. But given the amount of momentum that the Trump administration has from the crypto industry and its support, you're actually seeing, I think, a lot of buying outside of the United States as well, even though primarily the majority of the buying has been US based. And the reason is the strategic Bitcoin reserve that they've actually floated by, I think Senator Loomis was the first one to bring this to light, which would effectively be looking at buying upwards of 5% of the total supply of Bitcoin. And so I think that that's also affecting the price, because I'm sure other reserve banks around the world are considering adding Bitcoin to their balance sheets as well.
You mentioned, Joe, on the campaign trail, Trump did bring up another number of issues, policies, ideas, encouraging Bitcoin mining, national Bitcoin stockpile. I mean, for you, for an investor, what would you like to see him concentrate on? What would be the policies you think he should emphasize?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think it's important for the United States to be the leader as it relates to Bitcoin and crypto more generally. Starting with a strategic Bitcoin reserve is an excellent first step. But I think I speak for the entire investor community here that what we really are looking for is clear regulations and clarity around the way that we can actually ensure that America remains the leader in innovation, particularly as it relates to crypto and blockchain. And so our view really is that we'll see hopefully a lot more robustness and a comprehensive regulatory framework laid out for us, which not only enables investors like myself and other fund managers to navigate the space appropriately, but most importantly, the entrepreneurs in the United States that have been leaving the United States to start crypto and Web3 related businesses.
Joe, Trump did promise, I believe he said day one, fire SEC Chair Gensler. One, what do you make of that move? And two, Joe, I'm curious, do you think that move in part explains the kind of moves we're seeing in names like Coinbase, like Robinhood?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but I'm pretty sure he can't directly fire Gary Gensler. I do think there is a case to be made that he could remove him as chair. And furthermore, I find it unlikely that Gary Gensler would want to remain in the SEC under a Trump administration, given his so clear alignment with someone like Elizabeth Warren and her anti-crypto army. So there's no doubt that a new head of the SEC would be positive for Bitcoin and crypto generally. And I think that this is one of the reasons why you see, whether it's Coinbase, it's Robinhood, et cetera, the publicly traded companies that are already out there involved in the crypto industry benefiting from this sort of forecasted move of a new head of the SEC.
Finally, to circle back, Joe, I want to get your, you mentioned this legislation from Senator Loomis, strategic Bitcoin reserve, which would, among other things, it would implement a 1 million unit Bitcoin purchase program over a set period of time. You're basically kind of mirroring the size and scope of the gold reserves. Do you have any sense, line of sight, Joe, on whether that actually happens, that legislation becomes law?
Well, I mean, I think that's up to Congress and ultimately the president as well. I do think that there's a non-zero chance that this thing happens, and in fact, a high probability of it. If you look at the other commodities that the United States has historically had strategic reserves for, we're talking about gold and oil. Well, Bitcoin has been clearly labeled as a commodity for a long time. And given the kind of, I think, momentum again behind members of parts of the Republican Party and even some members of the Democratic Party seeing Bitcoin as a truly strategic asset, it just makes a lot of sense for this thing to actually come to light. Now, the question is, how long could that take? And I would argue, and this is just my own speculation here, that the Trump administration is likely going to focus on things like immigration first, as opposed to, say, setting up a strategic Bitcoin reserve. But that's okay, because I think the market is actually anticipating this taking a bit of time. It is Washington, D.C. Things move at a glacial pace. But more importantly, the reason I think people are adding now is because the price of Bitcoin should be significantly higher in the case that there's more kind of language and headlines surrounding the strategic Bitcoin reserve coming to fruition.
Joe, great to have you on the show today. Appreciate your time and insight.
My pleasure.